Mamoru Oshii is best known for his dystopian cyberpunk film Ghost in the Shell. But when I think of this famous Japanese director, my mind immediately lands on what I consider to be his most intriguing and beautiful work, Angel's Egg. Unlike subsequent videos to come, Angel's Egg isn't exactly a horror film. Rather, it's a movie that has within it a certain element of fear that I believe underscores its other elements. Firstly, I feel it inappropriate to not pay at least some attention to just how exquisitely crafted this movie is. Every shot of this OVA is carefully considered, from the consistently beautiful compositional work of each individual frame to the intricate brushwork used to create them. A striking aspect of this film is its use of light, dominated by a look of chiaroscuro like so many equally dramatic paintings. This low-key lighting entrances the viewer with its dynamically striking shadows and highlights, as well as an ethereal glow that radiates off things like skin and the egg itself. I believe the best phrase to use in order to characterize this work of abstraction would be dreamlike. With only so many words spoken and a landscape consisting of various, almost illogical features, the world of Angel's Egg feels familiar to the recesses of our own unconsciousness. A fascinating aspect of the movie, and certainly one that would lead to contention over whether the film has any merit at all, is that the director has stated that even he doesn't fully know what Angel's Egg is about. Now, frankly, I am one whom often finds the most enjoyment and value out of more traditional storytelling. Angel's Egg, for some reason, is different. It is made to be almost completely thematic. It exists in abstraction, and has been characterized not so much as a movie, but rather as moving artwork. So I wondered what it is that makes this movie still appear so resonant, and here is the explanation I offer. Angel's Egg being so dreamlike is indicative of one's subconscious. Thus, I must wonder whether it might be that while the conscious part of Mamoru Oshii might not know exactly what this movie is about, the decisions made in its telling come from a genuine place in his subconscious. Likewise, when something opens itself up to the idea of audience interpretation, it reveals just as much about the viewer as it does the director. Depending on what exactly you see, hear, and feel when watching Angel's Egg, you demonstrate an element of your own self. And so perhaps I reveal a part of my own self when I explain my own perspective on the film, a meditation on abandonment. A poignant sense of loneliness pervades throughout the movie. Empty countrysides and desolate towns exist in a quiet, vacant world. There are only two people that appear to still even be fully human, the only remaining company being the cold, mechanical tanks and the fishermen that seem to barely be human at all. The fishermen, when they aren't sitting as still as the statues that surround them, are only animate when they chase after the shadows of giant fish. Yet these fish aren't in any way real. They are merely specters dancing on the wall, and these men foolishly hurl their spears at them in a futile attempt to capture and kill them. A sense pervades that the amount of people both necessary to build these ornate structures and to live in them is far greater than those that remain. Even though there are still people in these towns, there are far more buildings than there are people. The greatest source of noise, in fact, is a seemingly mechanical thing, a giant eyeball-like mausoleum that first appears at the beginning of the film. Upon closer inspection, we see it's in fact made up of innumerable statues, all wearing the same clothes and holding clasped hands up to the sky. In essence, the movie communicates a sense of abandonment. But what is it about this concept that is so unsettling to us in the first place? Humans are social creatures, a fact I'm sure is nothing new to you. However, it cannot be understated just how much a genuine connection with those close to us and our community affects our psyche and happiness. These are the ties that we hold in great regard both societally and emotionally, and the idea of those ties being severed creates anguish and unease in our minds. Think about how horrible it would be if one day your friends simply cut contact with you. The strong emotional rope that tied you together would be cut, and from your wound it would feel as if you were bleeding out. All of that emotion, life experience, and connection you established would be severed, and you would be left with horrible and unresolved grief. Take it a step further. Your best friend abandons you, your closest ally and confidant. Your partner abandons you, someone who you've poured endless amounts of love into. Your parents abandon you, the people who are meant to keep you in their care and from whom you were born. Then, perhaps, at the end of this line of thought is the horrible idea that God would abandon you. The girl runs around by her lonesome, collecting and arranging bottles for what at first is no apparent reason. She seems to have no parents, and it's implied that she longs for the sort of protection they would afford her. We see the most important element in her coming to trust the boy is him offering her shelter beneath his coat, comforted by a soothing pat to her head. She is alone, and all she has is her egg. The egg is her comfort, and besides the collection of bottles, it seems the only task she has in life is to care for it. The egg appears to be an obvious metaphor for the concept of faith. It is the faith in the idea that the egg is full and will one day hatch that the girl finds the ultimate comfort, and as such, hope for the future. Opposed to this is the boy, who maintains a more jaded and pessimistic attitude towards the egg. He not only questions that there is anything inside, but outright argues against it. Curiously, he shows both great care toward the egg, yet is also the one who eventually breaks it. I believe the specific faith the egg appeals to is the belief that God exists and still loves us. In the latter part of the film, the boy delivers the longest amount of speaking time in a monologue.
我が作りし人を我が地の表より拭い去らん。人より獣、這う者、空の鳥に至るまで滅ぼさん。そは我これを作りしことを悔ゆればなり。今7日ありて我40日40夜地に雨を降らしめ我作りたるあらゆるものを地の表より拭い去らん。天と皆破れ天のと開けて雨40日40夜地に注ぎ箱舟は水の表に漂えり地に動く肉なるものその花に命の息の通うものすべての苦我にあるものは皆死ねりただ彼と共に箱舟にありし者のみ残れり彼地の表より水の引き鹿を見んとて鳥を放ち出しけるが再び彼のところへ帰らざりき
Many are familiar with the story of Noah's Ark. After deciding that the world is unclean and full of sin, God decides to wash away the world. The boy tells the same story, only it differs when it comes to the bird that Noah sends out. In the biblical version of events, the bird returns, and the family is able to find land once more and repopulate the earth. A new covenant is formed, and the promise is made that humanity will never be wiped out. In essence, God chooses to believe in humanity and remain with them. Here, not so. The bird does not return. The passengers forget why they're sailing in the first place, and in essence, forget their humanity entirely. It would seem that in this world, God has deemed humanity unworthy, too evil beyond redemption, and so he abandons them. The end of the film seems to be a nail in this lonely coffin. The camera pulls out farther and farther into the sky. We see the city, the fields, and finally, we see that the story hasn't taken place on a regular piece of land, but an overturned ark floating in the empty ocean of an abandoned world. And yet, faith persists. When the boy breaks the egg, there is nothing inside. The obvious conclusion to draw, therefore, is that the girl's faith was indeed misplaced, and the boy's pessimism was indeed the correct way to view the world. It's a heartbreaking revelation. The girl lets out a horrible scream of anguish and runs from the temple before falling into a body of water. However, Oishii characterizes the scenario as a matter of a person creating their own reality. Essentially, because the boy believes the egg is empty, it is. But likewise, if the girl believes it's full, then it is. When the girl falls towards the water and her own reflection appears in it, she is met with a grown-up version of herself. After plunging into it, she has become that grown-up version of herself. She is no longer a girl, but a woman. She lets out a final breath from the pitch-black depths. The bubbles rise to the surface, and she sinks to the bottom. Yet, curiously, those bubbles transform into many new eggs. Later, the mausoleum bursts forth from the ocean. It sends waves of water against the boy who stands motionless against the tide. And, when he looks out to it, he sees that amongst its ranks of statues now sits the girl, egg in hand. Well, what does that mean? It would seem to me that the girl, despite being given the proof against her faith being true, decides to believe regardless. In this way, she has a new understanding of reality. Prior to this, she had the hope of proof that one day her egg would hatch and she would be vindicated in her belief. While one might expect the act of growing up to be associated with accepting the truth that there is nothing, she instead does so through a commitment to faith despite the truth that seems to be in front of her. Many would call this blind faith, and perhaps rightfully so. All of the evidence points towards her believing in a lie, from the state of the abandoned world to the fact that there was indeed nothing within the egg. And yet, her faith persists. From her comes new eggs, new seeds of faith, and she is welcomed into a sort of ascendant seat amongst the other believers. There, amongst so many with hands clasped in prayer, she sits with her egg, like a choir of angels or communion of saints. For her faith, she is rewarded with a sort of eternal life. And so perhaps Oishii is telling us that no matter how bleak or decrepit the world may seem, heaven cannot abandon us unless we choose to abandon it. One might, and in fact, I might, contend that this is still quite the sour deal. Living in a world of abject pain like Angel's Egg would still certainly function like being abandoned, even if you actually weren't. And there's certainly an internal struggle to reconcile the idea that it's fine to suffer completely in this life for the sake of salvation in another. Yet there is also comfort. The idea that we can preclude such abandonment by remaining stalwart in our faith gives us a metaphysical power over ourselves. If, like Oishii says, the matter of what's inside the egg is made first in our minds and then in our reality, then we can overcome our fear of cosmic abandonment and move forward in our lives. Hello everybody, I just wanted to add a little addendum at the end of this video to say thank you so very much for helping me reach over 1,000 subscribers. This is mostly off of the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind video I did earlier, and I'm so happy to see that this many people care about my opinion on a movie. I've also got other videos if you want to watch those. They're equally, if not maybe even better, and they might want some love too. No, but I've been doing this since I was about a junior in high school, and I'm kind of just now seeing the sort of success that I've been hoping for, and a lot of that is due to the fact that I feel I'm finally making content that I can be fully proud of and feel fulfilled making. So thank you again, and there is more to come.